NBC 10 at issue, Sunday, May 16th, 2010, 2 days before the crucial primary election. All eyes on Pennsylvania, where Arlen Specter and Joe Sestak, the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. Specter and Sestak, now on NBC 10 at issue. Good morning. I'm Steve Highsmith. Voters go to the polls Tuesday in Pennsylvania. The tightest, most expensive, and most closely followed of the races is the one for U.S. Senate and the Democratic Party. Senator Arlen Specter and Congressman Joe Sestak each wants the Democratic nomination. Senator Specter joins me later in the program. With me now is Joe Sestak, two-term congressman from his native Delaware County. Thanks for being here and seeing you again, sir.
Good to be back.
Neck and neck is what this race is said to be. If you average all the polls together, most people say that. What does it mean today for you to be a Democrat?
That working families have a chance. That those who are unemployed will have Washington, have somebody who's going to be a warrior for them. Washington's broken. You hear it everywhere from people throughout Pennsylvania. How can you actually believe that someone who's been down there, they say, for 30 years, then switched his party, as Arlen did, to come to be a Democrat because he couldn't win the election, be expected now to help get us out of the mess he helped get us in with George Bush? What I know is this, is I don't want to be a public servant. I want to earn their trust, but I'd lose my job in a heartbeat over fighting for what's needed for them. The right small business policies, the right education and health policies. That's what it means.
People try to read tea leaves to define a character or people they don't know, like Arlen Specter or you personally. And so let's ask about some of the ads. You have some ads out there now that are raising questions. Arlen Specter's age or health, is it an issue?
His, absolutely not. But what is an issue is he's been down there for 30 years, advancing a Republican agenda. Now he's a Democrat? No.
So that is an issue. That has a photo of him in which he has white hair and thinning hair and was taken about or after the time of his chemotherapy. Why put that in as opposed to any other image?
Well, it was an image of him standing with Sarah Palin, who even last August, when he was on the Chris Matthews show, said he still believed John McCain and Sarah Palin were a better choice than President Barack Obama or Joe Biden. I'm the only Democrat who voted for President.
The new generation that you have in your ads, that's not an age reference backhanded?
Absolutely not. What it does is he's been down there for a generation with other politicians. It's time for a change, a new generation of energy and actually new ideas to get us going
You
again.
Mentioned the George Bush connection. You have another ad that's been running out there, one of your latest, in which you have him with Sarah Palin, with Rick Santorum, and with George Bush, and George Bush saying he can count on Arlen Specter. And in that, the senator says, "My change in party will enable me to be reelected." That is an accurate quote. There is another sentence that is not shown in your ad, which says that he says, again and again and again on the street, "Senator, we're glad you'll be able to stay in the Senate and help the state and the nation," which softens that first sentence a little bit. In other words, the impression is Senator Arlen Specter, according to his people, really cares about the state and believes that he's the best candidate and can have a positive impact, not that he's going there for himself.
NBC investigated it and said it was not taken out of context. NBC itself did that.
I just said that. It's not taken out of context, but there is a second sentence which they say softens that sentence a little bit so that it's not really Arlen's in there for himself, Arlen's in there for the state. You reject that?
Well, when he switched parties, if you remember, he went on Meet the Press, and he said, look, I got out of this my entitlement, which was my seniority down there, although he then lost it subsequently. But he never once said anything about why his switching parties would help Pennsylvanians. After he advanced the Republican agenda, and George Bush, in his own words, said he was his key allies. Look, I respect Arlen Specter, but if you remember, as we went over with weeks of positive ads, and then let Arlen Specter speak in his own words, he started the day before our first ad went up with negative false attacks. People are tired of the old Washington politics. They really think that we have to have someone down there who's beginning to work on issues and talk about issues. These ads of his say more about Arlen than they say about anyone else, that he doesn't have a record in a Democratic primary to run upon. So he resorts to these numerous negative false attacks. I think that kind of politics has to end.
Why won't you release your Navy records?
Because Arlen Specter, a Washingtonian senator who has sat down there for 30 years, has no right to ever question a veteran. I joined up there in Vietnam. I came all the way back and served in Afghanistan. I'm very proud of my record, which is public. of my service. And then we had the
when
chief
John
of...
Kerry was running for president, he released his records.
Shouldn't have done it. John Kerry, I stood up and defended. But here, the chief of naval operations actually said on the record in the Philadelphia Inquirer, I wanted straight talk. I put Joe Sestak in the crosshairs. He challenged people in the Rumsfeld administration, didn't want to be challenged. He was courageous in changing the Navy. And then a new chief of naval operations came in, appointed by Mr. Rumsfeld, and they wanted a new team. But I asked if I could retire because my daughter had her brain tumor. I needed 3 years to retire as a vice admiral, only had 1. For him to say anything else is wrong.
I want to pick up on that last thing to clarify, because in the debate, Senator Specter said you were a 3-star admiral and then you were demoted to a 2-star admiral. You're saying you did not have time in grade to be able to keep the 3rd star.
See, once you get above a lieutenant commander or a major, you must stay in that grade for 3 years, because they don't want you just all of a sudden take the job and then retire with an increase in pension. So I asked if I could retire early in order to take, as I addressed my daughter's...
I mean, to be fair, the position you were in was a political position. And when the CEO gets in, they can appoint their lieutenant,
absolutely.
so to
speak. As a matter of fact, Arlen Specter voted for me because I had to go before the Senate, and he voted for me to be a 3-star admiral. They have to review your records in order to be a 3-star admiral. That's correct. There's a political appointment, so to speak. Mr. Rumsfeld appointed someone else.
But to get back to the original answer to my question, are you saying that we can never question what veterans do?
No, I think no politician can just say, reveal your records, reveal this about what you discussed with your wife or anything. No. Look,
what if someone like myself, a reporter, says, you know what, in the interest of transparency, you've got what looks like a great 31-year career.
I do.
Why not release the records?
But why? Because Arlen Specter, as he then did this against Lynn Yackel, as you remember, and Jill Hoffel, similar things, never talked about the issues. If it isn't that, it'll be the next thing, and the next thing. Principle does matter, Steve. It's why I'm in this race. How could anyone abandon his party after 30 years because he couldn't win an election? Why does he switch positions on public option Defense of Marriage Act? Steve, I honestly believe principle does matter, and I would lose an election for principle.
I have to take a break. Straight ahead, more with Senate candidate Joe Sestak and later Senator Arlen Specter ahead on NBC 10 Edition.
You're watching NBC 10 at Issue.